You say you'll do it tomorrow, but when tomorrow comes, you're buried under guilt from the day before. You stare at your to-do list like it's a stranger holding a knife, and yet again, you don't do it. You scroll, snack, sleep, start again. A cycle so familiar, it almost feels safe. But here's the part you won't admit out loud. You're not lazy. You're tired of being at war with yourself. You're exhausted from making promises you never keep, from setting goals with fire in your chest, and watching that fire burn out before the week even ends. You think discipline is just about willpower, so when you break down, you tell yourself, you're weak, undisciplined, unfocused, maybe even doomed. But what if I told you? You've been lied to, and the way you're trying to build discipline is what's actually breaking it. You've read the books, watched the 5 a.m. routine videos, tried the habit trackers and digital detoxes, but nothing seems to stick because no one told you that discipline isn't about doing more. It's about being less divided. The pain you feel isn't because you're not trying hard enough. It's because every time you break a promise to yourself, a part of you stops trusting you. And over time, that fracture becomes a wound, and the wound becomes identity. I'm just not a disciplined person. But you weren't born undisciplined. You were taught the wrong story, and it's time to unlearn it, because there's a way to build discipline that doesn't burn you out, a way that doesn't shame you, but strengthens you, a way that's been practiced for over 2,000 years by warriors, emperors, and philosophers who didn't need phone apps or coffee to keep promises to themselves. The Stoics had no biohacks, no productivity gurus, but what they had was unshakable, a philosophy built on mastering the self, through reason, through values, through voluntary discomfort. They didn't rely on fleeting motivation, they relied on integrity. And today, you're going to learn why you struggle with self-discipline and why they didn't. You're going to see the difference between forcing yourself and forging yourself, because one breaks you, the other builds you. Let's begin. Most people treat self-discipline like a weapon. You beat yourself with it when you fail, you wave it around when you're winning, but deep down, it's built on fear. Fear of being lazy, fear of being average, fear of being forgotten. So you chase routines that look impressive. Wake up early not because it centers you, but because it sounds productive. You read 10 pages of a book not to learn, but to tick a box. You fast, cold shower, meditate, journal, all in the name of discipline. But when the storm hits, when you're tired, broke, heartbroken, sick, or alone, it all crumbles because your discipline was never yours. It was borrowed from Instagram Reels, from someone's morning routine on YouTube, from a book you half read on dopamine. You built a temple of discipline, but forgot to lay a foundation of understanding. Here's the truth. Discipline isn't about rituals. It's not even about results. It's about alignment between who you say you are and what you consistently do, and the Stoics understood this better than anyone. They didn't obsess over to-do lists, they obsessed over virtues, because to them, a disciplined life wasn't about achievement. It was about excellence, and excellence, in Stoic terms, means living in accordance with nature, with reason, with wisdom, with integrity. That's why Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Just that you do the right thing. The rest doesn't matter. Not the fame, not the opinions, not even the outcome. Just right action." But when your self-discipline is based on outcomes, on streaks, likes, checklists, or clout, you're setting yourself up to fail, because one bad day destroys the illusion. And without that illusion, you feel like you're back to zero, even though you've grown. That's not discipline. That's dopamine management disguised as virtue. Real discipline isn't sexy, it's quiet. It doesn't beg for recognition. It doesn't collapse when no one is watching, because it's rooted in identity, not performance. You don't need a new productivity system. You need to become someone who doesn't betray their own values. And to do that, you need to stop chasing what discipline looks like and start understanding what it feels like internally. When you're truly aligned with who you say you are, not who you perform as online. That's what we'll explore in the next part. The real roots of Stoic discipline and why it endures even when motivation dies. The Stoics didn't build their discipline on hacks. They built it on philosophy, not the kind you quote to sound smart, the kind you live, every hour, every decision, every breath. To them, discipline wasn't optional. It was a reflection of your soul, a test of your character, And most importantly, a tool for freedom. That's the paradox most people miss. Discipline isn't about restriction, it's about liberation. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Because if you can't control your impulses, if you're a slave to your cravings, your moods, your social media feed, then how can you ever claim to be free? This is where Stoic discipline departs from the modern version. Most people build discipline like it's a punishment. The Stoics built it like it was a shield, a way to protect their peace, their principles, their purpose. They knew that life was chaotic, that people would wrong you, that fortunes would turn, that death would come. And in the face of all that, the only thing you can control is yourself, your thoughts, your reactions, your values. That's what they trained, not to impress anyone, but to withstand everything. You scroll on your phone to escape discomfort. They sat with it. You quit when the results are slow. They stayed the course. You lash out. When you're angry, they paused, reflected, responded with reason. Why? Because to them, discipline wasn't suppression, it was mastery, not over others, but over the one domain that truly matters, the self. And here's what made their system unbreakable. They didn't rely on feeling like it. They trained to act, regardless of how they felt. Their guide wasn't motivation, it was virtue. They asked themselves, is this wise? Is this just? Is this courageous? Is this self-controlled? And they moved accordingly. They didn't wait for the right mood. They became the kind of person who acts rightly, even in the wrong mood. That's why Stoic discipline works. It's built on timeless inner principles, not trendy external routines. And if you want that kind of power, that kind of peace, that kind of freedom, you have to train the way they did. In the next part, we'll break down the 4 Stoic virtues that form the core of unshakable discipline, and how each one can transform your mind and habits from the inside out. To build unshakable self-discipline, you need more than routines, you need roots. The Stoics didn't rely on surface-level tricks. They anchored their entire lives to 4 core virtues, each one a pillar, a force, a weapon in the war against chaos and weakness. Let's break them down, one by one, and show how they power the kind of discipline that lasts. 1. Wisdom. Wisdom is your inner compass. It helps you discern what's true from what's tempting, what's useful from what's urgent. Most people act impulsively. They chase what feels good now, not what's good long-term. But a Stoic asks, is this the wise thing to do? Even if it's hard, even if no one's watching, even if it won't pay off for years, wisdom trains your mind to zoom out, to see the full picture, to weigh the cost of inaction, to say, I may not feel like doing this, but I know it's the right move. That's discipline point 2. Courage. Discipline isn't about safety, it's about strength, and strength requires courage. Courage to wake up when the world's still asleep. Courage to say no to distractions. Courage to push forward when doubt screams louder than motivation. The Stoics faced exile, poverty, death, and still acted with dignity. Because they understood, a life without courage isn't a life. It's a slow decay. You need courage to stay on the path when no one claps, when results take months, when every part of you wants to quit. Courage is what gets you through the dip, the cold, dry, lonely middle. That's where real discipline is born. 3. Justice. At first glance, this doesn't sound like a discipline trait. But think again. Justice is about doing what's right, not what's convenient, not what's comfortable. It means showing up because people depend on you, doing your work with integrity, not cutting corners, not cheating time. Justice connects your actions to impact. It makes your habits bigger than just self-improvement. Because when your discipline serves others, it sticks, it deepens, it becomes part of your identity. 4. Temperance. This is the heart of discipline, the virtue of self-control, the ability to say, I could, but I won't. It's what stops you from chasing every craving. It's what grounds you when emotions rise. It's what builds that calm intensity, that quiet strength people feel before you say a word. Temperance is not about denial. It's about direction, knowing what to hold back for, knowing when to rest, when to push, when to pause. The Stoics practiced it daily, from food to speech to ambition. They trimmed the excess so they could focus on the essential. Put all 4 together: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. And you get the full armor of Stoic discipline, not just to survive modern life, but to master it. Let's be honest, you want to be disciplined. You make the plans, you write the goals, you hype yourself up at midnight with motivational reels. But then, when it's time to execute, you self-sabotage again and again. Why? Because deep down, you've built a relationship with failure, one that's familiar, one that feels safer than success. Here's the truth. Most people aren't lazy. They're afraid of change, afraid of discomfort, afraid of what happens if they actually win. So they create invisible traps, setting 20 unrealistic goals at once, starting a habit with no structure, relying solely on motivation, punishing themselves for every slip-up. This isn't discipline, it's self-harm in disguise. The Stoics understood this. They knew the enemy wasn't just out there, it was within, the subtle voice that says, "You've always been like this, you'll mess it up anyway, you're not like those high performers." But a Stoic doesn't entertain that voice. They confront it, expose it, starve it. They don't let feelings vote. They don't wait for the mood to match the mission. They choose action because they know if you don't lead your thoughts, they will lead you, usually back to the pit you're trying to climb out of. Let's make this concrete. Every time you start something and stop halfway, you train your mind to expect failure. You normalize quitting, and your brain begins to think, "This is just who I am." But what if you change the story? What if you told yourself, "I finish what I start," and backed it with tiny wins repeated daily? Because discipline doesn't grow from guilt. It grows from evidence, from small, quiet victories that compound into confidence. The Stoics practiced this every day. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." It's not just words, it's identity, it's alignment. It's building a bridge between who you are now and who you're becoming. One action at a time. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the strength of your identity. That's why most people fail at self-discipline. Not because they lack willpower, but because they're trying to act disciplined while still thinking like someone who quits. The Stoics didn't fake it, they became it, through a deep alignment between their values and their behavior. Marcus Aurelius didn't wait to feel like an emperor. He acted like one even when the weight of Rome tried to break him. He wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." This is identity. This is self-discipline rooted in self-concept. So how do you start? Stop saying, "I'm trying to be consistent," and start saying, "I am a consistent person." Even if it feels like a lie at first, your brain listens. Your behavior adapts, and over time, your reality shifts. The Stoics knew the mind is a tool, and the first battlefield is belief. Here's your challenge. Choose one habit, something small, and attach identity to it. Not, "I want to read more," but "I'm a reader." Not, "I want to wake up early," but "I'm the kind of person who gets up before the world does." Then protect that identity with action, no matter how tiny, no matter how inconvenient, because repetition creates reputation. And your reputation with yourself is the most important one. And if you're watching this thinking, "This is what I've been needing," then you're exactly who this channel was made for. This isn't about hype. It's about healing. It's about clarity. It's about rebuilding your inner architecture, using the tools the Stoics left behind. So, if this is resonating, tap the subscribe button, not for me, for the version of you that's been waiting to wake up. You want to do the right thing, but something inside keeps pulling you off track. You say you'll eat clean, then you binge, you plan to focus, then scroll for hours, you promise to wake up early, then snooze until shame creeps in. You're not alone. You're not broken. You're just human. And the Stoics knew this battle better than anyone. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." To the Stoics, discipline wasn't about becoming a robot. It was about learning to ride the waves of emotion without being drowned by them. They didn't suppress feelings, they studied them, trained for them, prepared like warriors, because the real opponent wasn't the world. It was the inner noise that whispered, "Just this once." So what did they do differently? First, they practiced pause. Before reacting, they observed, noticed the pull, breathed through the tension, and questioned it. Is this desire useful? Or is it leading me away from who I want to be? That moment of pause is your power, your ability to choose a response, instead of being dragged by a reaction. Second, They understood that emotions are data, not commands. Feeling tired doesn't mean don't work. Feeling bored doesn't mean quit. Feeling fear doesn't mean run. It means pause, evaluate, and proceed with wisdom. The modern world trains you to obey your feelings. The Stoics trained to master them. They had rituals, mental routines to reset their compass. Journaling like Marcus did, negative visualization to prepare for loss, voluntary discomfort to build tolerance for difficulty. They weren't superhuman. They just built systems for inner strength. So the next time you feel tempted to quit, to scroll, to skip, to give in, ask, what would the disciplined version of me do right now? Then do that, not because it's easy, but because that's who you are becoming. You won't always win, but each moment of resistance builds your armor. Each no to temptation becomes a yes to growth. Self-discipline is forged through these small, invisible victories, and the Stoics left us the blueprint. You think you're undisciplined, but maybe you're just surrounded by too many easy ways to fail. Because no matter how strong your willpower is, it can't compete with a toxic environment forever. And the Stoics? They understood this long before neuroscience proved it. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." But how do you stop craving when your entire world is engineered to make you crave? Your phone lights up. 1,000 distractions, your fridge whispers, one more snack, your workspace, cluttered, noisy, scattered, your room, filled with triggers that tell your brain, relax, when you should be rising. The modern world is noisy, addictive, designed to sap your attention and sell it. And we call it normal. But the Stoics rejected normal. They designed lives that resisted chaos, that invited clarity, that made the right thing the easy thing. Marcus Aurelius had a palace, but lived like a soldier, disciplined bedtimes, early rising, cold mornings, focused work, and deep, quiet thought. His room wasn't filled with temptation, it was filled with purpose. Here's what the Stoics would suggest to you. If you want to master your life, master the spaces you spend it in, make distractions invisible, make good habits visible. Don't rely on motivation to write. Place your notebook on the desk, ready. Don't trust your willpower to avoid scrolling. Delete the apps, lock the phone in another room. Don't wait to feel like working out. Lay out your gear the night before. Small things that reshape the battlefield in your favor. Because discipline doesn't begin with willpower, it begins with design. The Stoics weren't ascetics for suffering's sake. They just knew that a cluttered life leads to a cluttered mind, and a cluttered mind wanders. A focused life wins. So if your discipline keeps collapsing, ask yourself this: is my environment fighting against me? Then change it, brick by brick, trigger by trigger, until it becomes a fortress. Before you scroll past this, ask yourself, when was the last time you paused? Not just to breathe, but to truly examine your day, your actions, your impulses, your victories, your lapses. We live forward. But the Stoics taught us to learn backward, to reflect, to recalibrate, to redeem the day before it's gone. Every evening, Seneca would sit quietly and ask himself, what habit did I feed today? What mistake did I repeat? What small moment made me proud? What can I do better tomorrow? Just a few minutes. But they changed the trajectory of his entire life. Because reflection isn't a luxury, it's a discipline. Here's the harsh truth. Most people don't grow because they never review. They repeat, they react, they rationalize. But the Stoics? They reviewed, they responded, they refined. Try this tonight. Before bed, sit down, no distractions. Ask yourself 3 questions. Where was I undisciplined today? What triggered it? And what can I change? What small win did I have that deserves repeating? This is how you train your subconscious to serve you, not sabotage you. Because the goal of Stoicism isn't perfection, it's progress with precision. This practice doesn't take 30 minutes, it takes 5. But over time, it becomes a compass, a mirror, a mentor, and a map. It's how you build self-discipline that isn't just reactive, but reflective, not just strong in the moment, but smarter with each passing day. There's something powerful about ending your day with honesty. It purifies your thoughts, it humbles your ego, and it empowers your tomorrow. So if your days have felt scattered, your habits loose, your growth flat, start here. With this simple ritual, It costs you nothing, but it gives you everything: clarity, control, and the quiet strength that comes from knowing yourself deeply and using that knowledge deliberately. Look around you, really. Pause and look. The people in your life, the content you consume, the habits you entertain, the standards you silently accept, they are shaping you, sculpting your discipline, or dismantling it. Every single day, the Stoics knew this deeply. Epictetus warned, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid by those who still value what you no longer value." In simpler terms, if you want to be different, you must disconnect from what keeps you the same. Discipline isn't just about what you do. It's about what you allow, because what you tolerate becomes your teacher, and what you entertain becomes your environment. Take stock today. Who drains your drive? Who mocks your ambition? Who normalizes excuses, shortcuts, distractions? Now flip it. Who sharpens your edge? Who calls you higher? Who lives with quiet integrity, even when no one's watching? The Stoics were intentional with this. Marcus Aurelius surrounded himself with men of virtue, people who valued self-restraint, not self-indulgence, wisdom, not whispers, clarity, not chaos. He even kept a journal to remind himself, daily, of who he admired and why, not out of envy, but out of aspiration. You want more discipline? Audit your circle, curate your content, starve your distractions, and feed your examples. Discipline thrives in environments where laziness feels awkward, where growth feels normal, and where your best self isn't the exception, it's the expectation. Here's a practical move. Unfollow 10 people who make you feel stuck, and follow 3 who make you feel strong. Mute noise. Amplify substance. You don't need more motivation. You need fewer distractions. Because the truth is this: you are becoming someone, right now, through your inputs, through your associations, through your quiet compromises. The question is, are you becoming someone you respect, or just someone who's tolerated by the people who benefit from your weakness? Discipline isn't always about saying yes to the hard thing. Sometimes, it's about saying no to the subtle thing, the soft influence, the small leak, the familiar poison. So choose your energy carefully, because in a world of loud noise and low standards, your filters will determine your future. We've all felt it, that spark of inspiration, that jolt of clarity, the moment you say, "This is it, starting tomorrow, I change." And maybe you do, for a day or 3, until the fire fades, and you're right back where you started, dragging yourself, negotiating with yourself, making deals with your weakness like it's your friend. The Stoics saw this problem centuries ago, and they responded with something counterintuitive. Don't rely on emotion. Don't even rely on discipline. Rely on identity. Here's what that means. Instead of saying, "I want to be more consistent," the Stoic says, "I am someone who follows through." Instead of saying, "I'll try to wake early," they say, "I'm the kind of person who doesn't snooze on life." They don't hype themselves up. They remind themselves of who they already are. This shift is subtle, but everything changes when your actions are no longer decisions, but reflections of identity. A Stoic doesn't need motivation to train in the cold, or write when uninspired, or show up when tired, because the action isn't up for negotiation. It's just who they are. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Simple, direct, brutal, but freeing, because now you don't need motivation. You just need to act like yourself." So here's the practical takeaway. Create rituals, not goals. Anchor your identity to your habits, not your intentions. When you journal, start with, "I am the kind of person who," and finish the sentence daily until your mind believes it, until your body defaults to it. Because real consistency isn't loud. It's quiet, boring, repetitive, but powerful. It's brushing your soul with discipline every day, even when no one claps, even when no one sees. Stoic consistency is not glamorous. It's a quiet rebellion against chaos, a silent war against drift, a refusal to become a man who says one thing and lives another. So if you're tired of being inconsistent, stop chasing hype and start building identity. One small act, repeated relentlessly, until it becomes who you are. Self-discipline isn't about punishing yourself. It's about protecting yourself from what? From becoming someone you don't recognize, from becoming a man who says one thing and lives another. You don't just lose momentum when you break a promise to yourself. You lose trust, and without self-trust, you start second-guessing every decision, sabotaging every plan, because deep down, you don't believe yourself anymore. The Stoics knew this. Character isn't built in the spotlight. It's forged in the dark when no one's watching, and you do the hard thing anyway. Not for a prize, not for praise, but because your word matters, even if it's only to yourself. Seneca said, "A good character, when established, becomes as a natural force," which means when integrity becomes who you are, discipline becomes second nature. You no longer need to fight urges. You flow with your principles. You no longer need willpower, because your identity is the power. And here's where we get personal. I've had seasons where I was undisciplined, where I said I'd do something and didn't. And I'll be honest, it doesn't just feel like failure. It feels like betrayal. Betrayal of the man I said I'd become. Betrayal of the standards I promised to live by. But I've also had seasons where I kept my word, even when it was hard. And there's a quiet confidence that comes with that. Not arrogance, but peace. The peace of living in alignment with your values. So if you take one thing from this video, let it be this. Self-discipline is not a chore, it's a form of self-respect. A way to show up for yourself when no one else will. A way to make sure that when you speak, you listen. When you promise, you follow through. And when you walk, your soul keeps pace. Because that's what Stoics do differently. They don't rely on motivation. They anchor themselves to meaning, and that meaning? It's often wrapped in quiet, boring, consistent acts of integrity, day after day, year after year. If this spoke to you, drop a comment with the promise you're ready to keep. No fluff, no vague intentions, just one real promise. To yourself, and if this message lit even a tiny fire in you, share it with someone who's been battling inconsistency, or leave a like to help it reach one more person who needs it, because Stoic discipline is rare, but when it's shared, it multiplies. If the ancient Stoics could sit across from you right now, they wouldn't speak in riddles or drown you in philosophy. They'd look you in the eye and say something simple, but unforgettable. Epictetus might say, "You become what you give your attention to," and then ask, "So what are you feeding your mind? Your time? Your energy?" Marcus Aurelius would remind you, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Then he'd challenge you, not to control the world, but to master the inner storm. Seneca would lean in and whisper, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And he'd ask, if time is your most precious resource, why give it away so easily? They wouldn't care about your goals. They'd care about your habits. They wouldn't ask about your plans. They'd ask about your standards. And most of all, they'd remind you that discipline isn't suffering. It's freedom. Freedom from your impulses, freedom from the opinions of others, freedom from the chaos of untrained emotion. In their world, self-discipline wasn't glamorous. It was daily. It was dull. It was dirty work done with clean intentions. It was rising when you'd rather rest, pausing when you'd rather react, and choosing virtue over ease. But here's the most beautiful part. They didn't expect perfection. They expected practice. They expected you to fall and stand again, to lose your way and return, to forget yourself. And then remember, because real discipline isn't a straight line, it's a spiral staircase, one step at a time, stumbling upward, driven not by ego, but by purpose. So, as you move forward, don't aim to become some flawless machine. Aim to become someone you trust, someone who honors their word, who chooses discipline, not to impress anyone, but to become someone worth being. That's the Stoic path, and now, it's yours too. If this message stirred something in you, leave a comment below with, "I choose discipline." 2 words, 1 decision. Let's see how many of us are walking this path together. Share this with a friend who's trying to rebuild their momentum. And if you want more Stoic wisdom every week, subscribe. This is Stoic Discipline, where ancient wisdom meets modern grit. And together, we build a mind that doesn't flinch when life hits hard. See you in the next one. Stay grounded, stay disciplined, stay you.